I know that you were the first, one of the first ones at Clive's party to speak about Whitney's passing the other day.
Yes.
And that was, did you know her well?
Yes, I did. You know, she'll definitely, truly be missed.
Yeah, she will, I agree. She was an amazing talent, and it's heartbreaking, really.
I believe that somebody killed my niece, just like they killed her mother.
Here's a picture of Diddy with Whitney Houston. Now here's one of Diddy and J-Lo at a party with Houston. This all makes sense now after they just revealed disturbing details. Whitney Houston's family just supposedly revealed the Diddy did it. As one of the greatest voices in music history, Houston's rise to stardom was meteoric, but her untimely death at age 48 left the world stunned. Among the countless rumors and theories that followed, one controversial narrative suggests that Diddy may have played a role, directly or indirectly, in the series of events that led to her demise. But how could Diddy be involved in Whitney Houston's downfall? Well, the new footage released will show you exactly how he could be involved.
I want my daughter back. I want you back. I want to see that glow in your eyes, that light in your eyes.
Bombshell allegation in the deaths of Whitney Houston and her daughter, Bobby Christina. This is what we know. Bobby Brown is blaming both deaths on...
How did the pressures of fame and the media's portrayal of Whitney Houston contribute to her emotional struggles and eventual tragic demise, despite her efforts to stage a career comeback? Whitney Houston's final hours on February 11, 2012, were filled with preparations for one of the music industry's biggest nights, the pre-Grammy Gala hosted by Clive Davis, her mentor and the man who helped launch her career. This event had become a yearly tradition, with Whitney often being the star attraction. This particular year, however, had a more somber tone, as whispers about Whitney's health and struggles with addiction had already become public knowledge. In the morning, Whitney was reportedly seen enjoying the Beverly Hilton Hotel's pool and casually greeting fans. While she seemed outwardly composed, those closest to her noticed she wasn't in her best form. According to reports from friends and her bodyguard, Whitney had been in an erratic state for weeks, alternating between excitement for the upcoming gala and moments of emotional vulnerability. Houston spent part of her day rehearsing, as she was scheduled to perform at the gala. However, even during rehearsals, her behavior raised concerns, with some witnesses describing her as disoriented and under the influence of substances. Despite this, she managed to meet with friends and associates in her hotel room during the afternoon. Her close friend and stylist Mary Jones, who had seen her earlier that day, said that Whitney was looking forward to a relaxing evening and preparing for the event later that night. As the day progressed, Whitney's assistant ran errands, leaving Whitney alone in her hotel suite. At around 3:30 p.m., when her assistant returned, she found Houston unconscious in the bathroom, submerged in the bathtub. Paramedics arrived quickly and attempted CPR but were unsuccessful. At 3:55 p.m., Whitney Houston was declared dead, bringing a tragic end to one of music's most iconic voices. Her sudden death sent shockwaves around the world. Just hours before, she had been seen alive, and no one could have anticipated the severity of what was unfolding in her private life. The timing of her death, right before the Grammys, seemed all the more heartbreaking, given the gala was meant to celebrate music and her legacy as an artist. Clive Davis decided to proceed with the party as a tribute to Whitney, but the room was filled with grief as news of her passing spread. What the medical report says? The medical examination and subsequent autopsy of Whitney Houston's body revealed a complex series of factors that contributed to her death. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office concluded that Houston had died from accidental drowning, but the autopsy also revealed a more intricate picture of what might have led to this outcome. Several underlying health issues and substance abuse contributed to her sudden death. The autopsy found that Houston had significant levels of cocaine in her system at the time of her death, along with traces of marijuana, the anti-anxiety medication Xanax, and muscle relaxers like Flexeril. The presence of these drugs indicated that, in the hours leading up to her death, Houston was likely impaired, which may have contributed to her drowning in the bathtub. Cocaine, a powerful stimulant, was a major factor. The coroner's report revealed that Whitney had a long-standing history of drug use, and her heart was showing signs of damage consistent with chronic cocaine abuse. Her heart was suffering from atherosclerosis, a condition where the arteries are hardened and narrowed due to plaque buildup. This condition increases the risk of heart attacks and other cardiovascular events, especially under the strain of drug use. The cocaine found in her system may have triggered a heart arrhythmia or other complications, making it difficult for her to respond to the situation when she lost consciousness in the bathtub. The report also confirmed there was no evidence of foul play or physical trauma. Though some media outlets speculated about other possibilities, the coroner's findings pointed to a tragic mix of health deterioration and substance abuse as the leading causes of her death. The combination of prescription drugs in her system, including Xanax and muscle relaxers, further compounded her impaired state. These medications, particularly when combined with alcohol or stimulants like cocaine, can severely depress the central nervous system. This likely left Houston lethargic, less aware of her surroundings, and unable to prevent herself from drowning once she slipped under the water. While her death was officially ruled as accidental, the broader picture painted by the autopsy highlights the dangers of chronic drug abuse and the cumulative toll it can take on the body. For Whitney Houston, years of substance abuse had worn down her body, and despite her attempts to reclaim her former glory in music, the physical effects of her lifestyle ultimately contributed to her untimely demise. The Beverly Hilton Hotel, room 434, became an unexpected and tragic setting on February 11, 2012. It was in this suite that Whitney Houston, one of the greatest voices in music history, spent her final moments before being found unconscious in her bathtub. While the world mourned her sudden passing, the details of what transpired inside the hotel room have since been subject to speculation, analysis, and media scrutiny. Houston had been staying at the Beverly Hilton in preparation for the pre-Grammy Gala, an event she had attended many times before. On the day of her death, her room was bustling with activity. Assistants, friends, and stylists came and went as Whitney prepared for her appearance at the event. To outsiders, it might have appeared to be just another day for a superstar gearing up for a major event. But behind the closed doors, the mood was far more concerning. Witnesses who entered the room described it as chaotic, with personal belongings scattered around evidence of Whitney's troubled state of mind, and possibly her long-standing struggle with addiction. Prescription pill bottles, cosmetics, and other personal items were found throughout the room. There were also traces of alcohol, although the autopsy later confirmed no significant levels of alcohol were present in her system at the time of her death. The bathroom, where Houston's body was found, became the focal point of the investigation. The autopsy confirmed that Houston had drowned in the bathtub, a heartbreaking and tragic end for someone of her stature. Her assistant discovered her submerged in the water when she returned from running errands. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but by then it was too late. Forensic investigators scoured the room for any signs of foul play, but found none. The scene was consistent with an accidental drowning, exacerbated by the impairing effects of the substances in her system. The hotel room, once a place of luxury and comfort, became the setting for a celebrity tragedy that captivated the world. In the immediate aftermath, the room was sealed off for further investigation. But in the weeks following her death, more details emerged about the conditions in which Whitney spent her final hours. The cluttered nature of the room, along with the prescription medications found, painted a stark picture of a superstar in decline. Whitney's struggles with addiction had been widely publicized, but this final snapshot of her life added a somber layer to the narrative, showing just how deeply those struggles had affected her well-being. The hotel room itself has since become a part of the mythology surrounding Whitney Houston's death. Like the Beverly Hilton Hotel, it is now synonymous with one of the most tragic losses in the entertainment world. a stark reminder of how fame and personal turmoil can intersect in devastating ways. The death of Whitney Houston on February 11, 2012, not only shocked the world but also deeply impacted her family, particularly her daughter, Bobbi Kristina Brown, who was 18 at the time. The bond between Whitney and Bobbi Kristina had always been a close one, with Bobbi often accompanying her mother to public events. The tragedy of Whitney's death left a devastating void in Bobbi Kristina's life, leading to a heartbreaking downward spiral that mirrored many of her mother's struggles. Bobbi Kristina's reaction to her mother's death was one of profound grief. In the immediate aftermath, she was hospitalized twice due to stress and anxiety. Witnesses close to the family stated that she was inconsolable, and it was clear that losing her mother so suddenly had taken an immense emotional toll on her. Whitney had been both a mother and a mentor to Bobbi Kristina, and without her, Bobbi struggled to find her footing. In the months following Whitney's death, Bobbi Kristina's life became increasingly troubled. She inherited her mother's estate, including significant financial assets, but the money did little to ease the emotional pain. She became the subject of intense media scrutiny, and concerns grew over her well-being. Reports surfaced that she was turning to drugs and alcohol as a way to cope with the loss, echoing the very issues that had plagued her mother. Friends and family urged her to seek help, but the public pressure and personal grief seemed overwhelming. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Bobbi Kristina's story is how closely it paralleled her mother's. On January 31, 2015, less than 3 years after Whitney's death, Bobbi Kristina was found unresponsive in a bathtub in her Georgia home. The circumstances were eerily similar to her mother's passing, with Bobbi Kristina discovered face down in the water after an apparent drug-related incident. After being placed in a medically induced coma, she remained unconscious for 6 months before passing away on July 26, 2015, at the age of 22. Bobbi Kristina's death marked a tragic continuation of the Houston family's struggles. For Whitney's mother, Cissy Houston, the loss of both her daughter and granddaughter was almost too much to bear. In interviews following Bobbi Kristina's death, Cissy spoke about the overwhelming grief she felt and how she struggled to cope with the loss of 2 generations in such a short span of time. Other family members, including Whitney's brother Gary Houston and sister-in-law Pat Houston, also expressed their heartbreak over losing both Whitney and Bobbi Kristina. The legal battles that followed Bobbi Kristina's death further compounded the family's grief. Nick Gordon, Bobbi Kristina's boyfriend at the time of her death, was the subject of a wrongful death lawsuit filed by the Houston family. The lawsuit alleged that Gordon had physically abused Bobbi Kristina and was responsible for giving her a toxic cocktail that led to her unconsciousness in the bathtub. Although Gordon was never criminally charged, a civil court ruled in favor of the Houston family, holding him legally responsible for her death and ordering him to pay $36 million in damages. The tragic deaths of Whitney Houston and Bobbi Kristina Brown have left an indelible mark on their family. For those who loved them, the pain of their loss is compounded by the knowledge that both women struggled with the pressures of fame, addiction, and personal demons. The Houston family continues to mourn privately, while also trying to preserve Whitney's legacy and protect Bobbi Kristina's memory. In the years since, they have focused on honoring Whitney's contributions to music and culture, while also raising awareness about the dangers of substance abuse and the emotional toll that fame can take on young people. Whitney Houston's battle with addiction. Whitney Houston's battle with addiction was one of the most publicized aspects of her personal life. Despite her meteoric rise to fame in the 1980s and early 1990s, her struggles with drug and alcohol abuse became increasingly visible by the late 1990s and into the 2000s, casting a shadow over her career and personal life. The public watched as Whitney, once known for her pristine image and unparalleled vocal talent, began to unravel under the weight of her personal demons. Houston's addiction issues were believed to have started in the mid-1990s, around the time when her marriage to R&B singer Bobby Brown was garnering media attention. Their tumultuous relationship, which was often characterized by public arguments and legal troubles, became a focal point for tabloids. Many speculated that the influence of Brown, who had his own history of substance abuse, contributed to Whitney's decline. However, in interviews later in life, Whitney took ownership of her addiction, acknowledging that her drug use was a personal choice and not something she could blame on anyone else. Her drug of choice was reportedly cocaine, although she also admitted to using marijuana and abusing prescription drugs. In a famous 2002 interview with Diane Sawyer, Whitney was confronted about her drug use. Her defensive and, at times, erratic responses became emblematic of how deep her addiction had taken hold. In that interview, she delivered the now infamous line, "Crack is whack," attempting to distance herself from the perception that she was addicted to crack cocaine. However, her denial of the severity of her addiction became a key talking point, with many realizing that she was not yet ready to face the full extent of her problem. By the early 2000s, Whitney's career had taken a significant hit. Her once powerful voice had deteriorated, and she struggled to maintain her previous level of success. Public appearances became more infrequent, and when she did perform, it was often marred by reports of her being late, acting erratically, or delivering lackluster performances. Her 2002 album, Just Whitney, failed to reach the commercial heights of her earlier work, and critics were quick to point out the noticeable decline in her vocal abilities. Despite multiple attempts to seek treatment for her addiction, including several stints in rehab, Whitney continued to struggle. Friends and family members have since spoken about the challenges of trying to help her. In particular, her mother, Cissy Houston, wrote candidly in her memoir about her efforts to get Whitney the help she needed, even going so far as to stage an intervention. While Whitney would sometimes agree to enter rehab, the results were often short-lived, and she would relapse soon after. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Whitney's addiction was the way it tarnished her once immaculate public image. In the 1980s, she had been marketed as the good girl of pop music, a clean-cut role model with an angelic voice. However, by the 2000s, the public perception of Whitney had shifted dramatically. Her struggles with addiction were splashed across tabloid covers, and her personal life, once kept private, was now being dissected in front of millions. Despite these challenges, there were glimmers of hope in Whitney's later years. In 2009, she released her final studio album, I Look to You, which was seen as a comeback of sorts. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and received praise for its vulnerability and emotional depth. Fans and critics alike were hopeful that Whitney had finally turned a corner in her battle with addiction. However, the reality was far more complex. While Whitney may have been trying to get her life back on track, the years of drug abuse had taken a toll on her physically and mentally. Her voice, once her most prized asset, had been severely damaged, and her health had deteriorated. By the time of her death in 2012, it was clear that addiction had played a significant role in her decline. Whitney Houston's sudden death in February 2012 sent shockwaves through the music industry. Her legacy as one of the greatest vocalists of all time was indisputable, and her loss was felt profoundly not only by her fans, but also by fellow artists who had admired and been inspired by her work. The tributes and memorials that followed her death were a testament to the impact she had on generations of musicians, singers, and producers. Almost immediately after the news broke, tributes began pouring in from artists across the world. Houston's death occurred on the eve of the 2012 Grammy Awards, an event she had dominated during her peak years in the industry. The timing of her death added to the emotional intensity of the reactions, as the awards ceremony became an opportunity for the music world to collectively mourn her passing. One of the most poignant tributes came during the Grammys itself, where Jennifer Hudson, who had long cited Whitney as a major influence, performed a stirring rendition of I Will Always Love You. Hudson, visibly emotional, managed to channel both her grief and admiration into a powerful performance that resonated with audiences worldwide. The performance was met with widespread praise, with many commenting on how fitting it was for a younger generation of artists to pay homage to Whitney, whose career had paved the way for countless others. Mariah Carey, who had worked closely with Whitney on the hit duet When You Believe, expressed deep sorrow at her passing. In an interview, she spoke about Whitney not just as a collaborator but as a friend. Carey reflected on the ways in which Whitney had been misunderstood by the public and how her struggles had often overshadowed her talent. Mariah, along with other artists, emphasized that Whitney's voice was her gift to the world and that her legacy should be defined by the brilliance of her music, rather than the personal challenges she faced. One of the most significant memorials took place in Newark, New Jersey, where Houston had grown up. Her funeral, held at New Hope Baptist Church, was a star-studded yet somber event. The service was attended by many of her closest friends and family, as well as high-profile figures in the music industry, including Stevie Wonder, Alicia Keys, and Kevin Costner, her The Bodyguard co-star. The ceremony was broadcast live, allowing fans from around the world to join in mourning her loss. Stevie Wonder performed at the funeral, paying tribute to Whitney with a heartfelt rendition of Ribbon in the Sky. Alicia Keys, who had shared a close bond with Whitney in the later years of her life, also performed, offering a deeply emotional version of her song, Send Me an Angel. Whitney Houston's death also sparked a larger conversation within the music industry about the pressures faced by artists, particularly those who rise to fame at a young age. Many pointed out the intense scrutiny and expectations that Whitney faced throughout her career, noting that these factors likely contributed to her struggles with substance abuse. In the months following her death, several musicians, including Lady Gaga and Adele, spoke out about the toll that fame can take on mental health, using Whitney's experience as a cautionary tale. Beyond the public tributes, Houston's music saw a massive resurgence in popularity following her death. Her songs topped charts worldwide, and her albums re-entered the Billboard 200, with the greatest hits rising to the number 2 spot. This resurgence served as a reminder of Whitney's enduring influence on the music industry, even years after her last major hit. Whitney Houston's legacy continues to be celebrated to this day. Posthumous tributes, including documentaries like Whitney, Can I Be Me, and Whitney, have sought to shed light on her life, both as a musical icon and as a complex individual navigating the highs and lows of fame. Musicians still cite her as one of the greatest voices of all time, and her songs remain staples in the playlists of fans young and old. Her influence on vocal technique, performance style, and the crossover appeal of R&B and pop music is undeniable. Whitney Houston's death may have marked the end of her physical presence in the world, but her musical spirit continues to inspire and influence artists around the globe. Her impact on the music industry remains as strong as ever, and her loss is still felt deeply by those who loved her, both personally and professionally. New evidence and theories about Whitney's death. The combination of cocaine and the presence of other drugs in her system, such as Xanax, marijuana, and Benadryl, created a dangerous cocktail that likely rendered her incapable of recognizing the danger she was in. The role of her long-standing heart condition also played a significant part in the official conclusion. The coroner's report noted that Whitney had atherosclerosis, a condition in which the arteries become clogged with fatty substances, reducing the flow of blood and increasing the risk of heart attack or stroke. Chronic cocaine use is known to exacerbate this condition, putting additional strain on the cardiovascular system. Experts speculated that a heart arrhythmia could have incapacitated Whitney while she was in the bathtub, leaving her unable to save herself from drowning. In the years following her death, some alternative theories and rumors have circulated regarding the true cause of Whitney Houston's demise. One persistent theory was that foul play may have been involved, given the high-profile nature of her career and her troubled personal relationships. Some pointed to the presence of other individuals in the hotel leading up to her death, questioning whether anyone could have contributed to the situation. However, law enforcement officials quickly dismissed these rumors, stating that there was no evidence of foul play or external intervention. Another theory that gained traction was that Whitney's death was the result of neglect or oversight on the part of those around her. Critics questioned whether her bodyguards, assistants, and friends should have been more vigilant in monitoring her behavior, particularly given her history of drug use. Some suggested that had someone checked on her more frequently or noticed signs of distress earlier, her life might have been saved. However, those close to her have since defended their actions, noting that Whitney was often fiercely independent and resisted attempts by others to intervene in her private affairs. In addition to these theories, some investigations have revisited the role of prescription medications in her death. The combination of Xanax, a powerful anti-anxiety medication, and other substances in her system likely played a significant role in her impaired state. Critics have questioned whether doctors who prescribed these medications were aware of the full extent of Whitney's drug use, and whether more could have been done to prevent her access to such potentially harmful combinations of drugs. In recent years, investigative documentaries and interviews with those who knew Whitney best have provided further insight into her final months. One recurring theme is the intense pressure she felt to stage a successful comeback after years of battling addiction. By 2012, Whitney had been making strides to reclaim her former glory. Her appearance in the film Sparkle, a remake of a 1976 movie, was meant to be a triumphant return to both the big screen and the music scene. However, behind the scenes, it became clear that she was still struggling with personal demons. Her fluctuating health, combined with the stresses of fame, may have contributed to her reliance on drugs as a coping mechanism. The investigative findings, Whitney's death has sparked broader conversations about the music industry's treatment of its stars. Some have pointed out that Whitney, like many other artists, was subjected to immense pressure to maintain a certain image and perform at an incredibly high level, despite her personal struggles. The investigation into her death has, in some ways, illuminated the darker side of fame and the toll it can take on even the most talented and beloved artists. While the official investigation into Whitney Houston's death concluded that it was an accident caused by a combination of drug use and heart disease, the legacy of her passing has led to ongoing discussions about substance abuse, mental health, and the role of those around public figures. Forensic experts and fans alike continue to wonder whether more could have been done to prevent such a tragic loss. But the reality remains that Whitney's death was the result of a complex interplay of personal, medical, and emotional factors. Ultimately, the investigation into Whitney's death may never fully answer every question about what happened in her final moments. However, the new evidence and ongoing theories serve as a reminder of the challenges she faced and the incredible legacy she left behind. Whitney Houston's passing was a tragic loss for the world, but her story continues to inspire discussions about how to better protect and support those who live their lives in the public eye.